It's always a long-term plan. So for example, as Muslim, the shaitan doesn't come and say, become a disbeliever, does he? Does he do that?
No.
No. Okay. So the shaitan that comes to you will take you through steps. He's smarter than that. Right? He will take you from one level to the next. So for example, if you're an individual who, mashallah, says completely from haram and fulfills all their obligation and goes far and beyond that and does all the sunnahs and even the acts of worship that are preferable and surrounds himself and guards himself and protects himself with all these adhkar and recitation of the Quran and so forth, the first thing he wants to try to do is do what? Move you away not just from doing the sunnahs, but doing sunnahs of greater value and reward to a sunnah that is of a lesser value and reward. Okay? And then he's going to try to, if he's able to do that, then he'll move you to maybe perhaps the next step, which is maybe perhaps just doing the sunnahs. And then he's successful to do that, you're doing the obligations, now you're pretty close. Okay? Then he's going to move to that for you to commit minor sins. And just commit them once or twice. But we're talking about over here, yes, initially committing them once, but then getting used to them. Okay? Once you get used to them, will you ask for repentance? Or stop? Would you stop doing them? Most people won't, right? Because they got accustomed to it. Once you get accustomed to it, now he's got the ball rolling, right? A bit faster. Because now you're accumulating sins. Your heart's starting to harden a little bit more. It's starting to get darker. And then you're going to start moving away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think of any person who's falling to sin, they're mostly falling to one of those patterns. Okay? So you're moving away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now he's going to play on either you falling to more major sins or starting to leave the prohibitions. Before you man the obligations. Now most people will not budge from the obligations yet. And so he's going to try to make you fall more into major sins. Once you fall major sins, that's a huge plummet. Okay? Now you're going to fall into it once, repent, but then maybe a second or the third time moving further. Then it's going to equalize with the obligations. Then you're going to start reducing them. Okay? Now the first obligation that you're going to start skipping is your prayers. It's going to start with you not praying on time. Start with that. Then skipping them. Then altogether, you might maintain Jum'ahs and Eids. But this is on that path. And now eventually, if he's able to convince you to do more, and then even for whatever reason, right, decorate that reason, you need your job, right? You can't leave your job. You all, your livelihood, or whatever the case is, okay? Or why do you have to do this? And then misconceptions will start seeping in, okay? Now the shaitan is doing all these things. And so one step through the next, okay? And then once you start leaving all your obligations, your acts of worship, you're committing one sin. Actually, leaving your obligation itself is a major sin on its own. So it's just one sin over the other. Okay, you're becoming more distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That watchfulness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be gone. And next thing you know, right, if he's going to able to move you to the next stage, right, now he's got you at a good stage. You're a complete, heedless individual. Yes, you're still a Muslim, but eventually you're going to get a bit punished severely by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If he can move you to the next step, the way he does it is by misconceptions. Okay. Once those misconceptions have settled, and you have a lot of misconceptions, wrong ideas about the religion of Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you're very easy to push over to the other side. Okay? And so this process takes years, depending on your situation where he starts and works on. But what is most important for us to understand is that each one of us, the shaitan knows our weakness. Each one of us is more prone to one desire to the other. And so he's able to decorate them for us one way or another. Each one of us. So this is why we have to be careful. Now, how do we make sure that we, inshallah, do not, or kind of protect ourselves from our desires? That's the next thing. So I'm going to ask you to talk a bit more because I'm getting, my voice get a bit tired. So how can we protect ourselves? Constant remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what does that mean?
Dhikr, azkar, constant worship.
Constant worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is true. Okay. So if you're constantly reminded of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're always conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you're always conscious of Allah ta'ala, when you are in the moment of falling into such a desire, you're thinking of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that right? That is a good one. Another one? Yes?
Turn your phone off after Isha.
Say what?
Turn your phone off after Isha.
I like that one. That is true. Turn your phone off, right? But your phone, what if you're using it to listen to,
That's the shaitan waswasa.
No, I'm serious. What if you're listening to actually Islamic lectures or reading the Quran from it or any of these aspects? Because, by the way, your phone is a tool. Okay? The reality is it is a tool. It can be a very positive tool or a very negative tool. But yes, the shaitan can move you from that goodness to the... Now, if the first thing you're opening is your Facebook account, your Twitter account, or I don't know how many social medias there are right now. Instagram and...
Snap.
Instagram and... No, there's something else now.
Snapchat.
Well, that's old school, by the way.
WhatsApp.
I don't know what else. But any of these things. So if you start from them, quite obviously you're going to run to something else. But...
Be with the righteous people.
Good, excellent, right? Surround yourself with righteous individuals. Because that has two folds. One, they'll remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So the consciousness is over there. But two, you'll never ever be deprived from their support. Because righteous individuals will always support you. Right? They'll take your hand. If you're falling, they'll kind of help you out. Right? That is very important. Right? But it's also that support network that we require. Now when we go through this world, we obviously will need companionship, friends on that road, on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is where it comes in, support for us to find the righteous individuals, righteous support, and so forth. Right? There's two good suggestions, excellent. I'm not saying your suggestion is not right, good, it's an excellent suggestion. But we're looking at a bit more of a core thing that would help us even resist that issue. Anything else?
Knowledge.
Knowledge.
Gaining knowledge.
Like biology and chemistry and physics?
No. Oh yeah, that could help too, but...
Yeah, it's true. It could help. No, what kind of knowledge are we talking about?
Sound.
Okay. Well, how does that help?
Makes you more conscious, and the other stuff that you said,
Okay, so it leads back to the consciousness. Right? So this is more of a methodology of how we can gain more consciousness or more understanding. Because the more knowledgeable you are of perhaps of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more conscious of you are of Him, the more fear you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not just fear, I should say more khashya. Right? Khashya is a special kind of fear. Right? I know it's kind of hard when you translate things in English. Because khashya and khawf, how do you translate that?
fear.
It's fear and fear, right? However, khashya is a higher level, a higher status of fear. Khashya is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the scholars with, those who have knowledge, because it's more of a different level of fear. It's fear with understanding. Well, khawf is usually
Natural.
not just natural instinctive, but also of something that's the unknown. But also one of the difference is khashya has more composure. Okay? So sometimes the example that they give is an individual when he sees a flood, right, or something, or let's say a flood coming. A person who has khawf, right, it's irrational. They'll run in every direction. Okay? Most likely these individuals might survive and might not. But a person who has khashya, with knowledge and more composure, he understands it, he sees the fear, but will quite often because of that composure, will hide behind something that would protect him from the flood. Does that clarify the difference between both? Right? There's fear in both, but there's a bit of a difference. But anyway, fine, seeking knowledge, which will lead to consciousness and fear. Anything else?
I have one thing.
Wait, I have to take it from there.
Trying to be both proactive and retroactive, so everyone understands where their weaknesses are. So
Excellent, I like that one. Understanding your weakness. A person who does not understand their weakness cannot protect himself. And this is basic, in our world affairs that we deal with it. How we deal with our world, even at the political scene, right, in countries. Right? When you have a weak point, a dangerous aspect, whether you're borderline, you fortify that, right? If you have, even as human beings, one way or another, you're weak in one aspect, what do? You strengthen it. Is that right? And so when you know your weak points, you're on guard, so that you would not come from that, you would not be attacked from that direction. So if you know that you're weak to a certain temptation, right, that you might fall into quite often because this is a weakness of you, or because you're in a certain situation when it happens, you will fall into that temptation. It helps you not fall into it by keeping yourself from that specific situation, whether it's a specific individual or a place or whatever the case is. That's an excellent one. Yes, Sheikh.
I'm sorry, maybe I'll wait for the Q&A, but my question is the qualities that you described. When we look back in the story of that monk who actually, went and ultimately did a grave sin with a woman who stayed next to, Shaitan took a step-by-step approach, but again he had these qualities that you described. He was a very deep worshipper, and I'm sure he must be God conscious. But we see that again, it was a step-by-step approach by Shaitan that made him deviate. But again, the qualities that that we just discussed.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to get that in a bit towards the end. Okay, what would you do if he fell into it? Right. That's not the thing. Is not falling into it. The problem is what happened.
What happened?
Right.
Yeah.
And it started by
despite having these qualities.
No, but it started with small sins. Okay. And we're going to get that in a second. But please remember that. Okay. Now, by the way, there's something important that none of you have mentioned so far. Are we able to do anything without the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No, I really need you to wake up a little bit. Are we able to do anything without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
La.
No, where do we get our strength from? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first thing we need to do is what? Dua. Right? The Prophet ﷺ used to do that. Like, a lot in dua. Allahumma ati nafsi taqwaha wa zakkaha anta khayru man zakkaha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala attain myself or my soul. It's taqwa. Right? Wa zakkaha, purify it. Anta khayru man zakkaha. You're the best that purifies it. It's very basic. Like, this is one of our strongest weapons. Okay? It's something that is important. That dua is imperative for us to remember. So I can't remember who was one of the Sahaba. I think it might have been Umar ibn Khattab. He said, أنا لا أحمل هم الاستجابة لكن أحمل هم الدعاء. I'm not concerned, right, about the acceptance or the response to the dua, but I'm concerned or more worried about making the dua in the first place. Right? So this is something we have to remember. One of the most important things is dua. Okay? And we have to practice that. If we ever want to stay on the straight path, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us on the straight path. If we ever are afraid of falling into temptation, is ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from that temptation. And this is something that is important for us. And this that does fall into sin. But one of the most important things it does, it shows us or humbles us and makes us really understand our strength, our true nature, how it is, and our humility. It makes us really submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and admit that we are weak and He is the strong. That we are in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and He's the one that is not in need of anyone. That submission or that humility, that breaking down in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in itself is an act of worship. Right? And we have to admit this. And it's only when we do the opposite, the arrogance that I can do this on my own, is when we fall. Right? Go back to the story of Adam, right? And the Iblis. The problem of Iblis was what? Arrogance. Okay? They both fell into sin. But one of them continued because of arrogance. This is something very problematic. Once you challenge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even when He told Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Because you led me astray. I'm gonna lead them all astray. Or I'll decorate things for them in this world and then I'm gonna take them with me. And all the promises that He made, because He accused Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that led him astray. He did not acknowledge his fault. Okay? It was arrogance. So that's a bit of an issue. We have to remember that. So that's dua. Any other suggestions?
Limiting indulgences.
Sorry?
Limiting our indulgences.
I like that one. Limiting your indulgences. Indulgence in haram, right?
I think it's talking about...
No, not even then, right? Limiting and indulging of what is permissible. By the way, a lot of the people the pious individuals, this is what they do. It's not they don't indulge in permissible, but they limit the indulgence of what is permissible. Because when we indulge in too much of what is permissible, okay, we get accustomed to a lot of things. We sometimes feel the lack of needness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we live this luxurious life one way or another, to its fullest extent, sometimes we forget a lot of things. And sometimes that leads to a bit more of the other end of shahawat. But that's a beautiful point. But that's a bit more of a higher rank. Okay. Let's start with the basics a little bit. So we're talking about increasing consciousness, right? Spirituality, knowledge. And the other suggestion was
Understanding your weakness.
understanding our weakness, dua. And there was a fourth one that mentioned.
Humbleness. Like not being arrogant.
That comes with dua, right? That's a part of it. Come on, I think maybe there's another one. We talked about consciousness.
Companionship. So,
Oh, good, sorry. Companionship, righteousness, stay with the righteous people. Okay. So far we're good, we're good. All right, now, the other thing we can do, which is also important, which is the best way to resist false temptation, which is patience. Right? The main key, or one of the main aspects that we can overcome the shahwat is patience. Because no matter what a shahwa is, it's always something that is, does it stay with you or it's fleeting? Right? It has a strength moment and then it goes away, right? Yes? Come on, we all face these urges one way or